Why conversations die so fast and you didn't even notice. You think you're having okay conversations, but most of the time they don't actually go anywhere. Not because you said something wrong, but because you said something too complete, too predictable, too efficient, too closed. You say things like, "I'm good. Yeah, it was fine. Just busy." You answered the question and gave the conversation nowhere to go. And this isn't just in awkward situations. It happens in normal conversations all the time. That's the part most people miss because the goal isn't to respond, it's to leave something open, something the other person can step into. And once you start hearing where conversations close, you can stop it before the conversation dies. And you see this immediately in the most common questions people ask. "How are you?" And you say, "Good, great, busy." That's just normal. It feels polite. It even feels correct. But that response does one thing. It shuts the door because there's nowhere to go after that. And the other person feels it immediately, even if they don't consciously think about it. You didn't say the wrong thing. You just said the last thing. The difference is small, but it changes everything. Instead of closing the answer, leave something unfinished. Most people say, "I'm good." You give them something to follow up on. "I'm good. Just got back from something interesting, actually." Now, there's a conversation to step into. Now, the conversation has direction. This is where most people get it wrong. You've probably been trained to be efficient with your words. Answer the question, keep it moving, don't overcomplicate it. And that works for getting through conversations, but not for building them. Because efficiency kills momentum. You answered the question, but you didn't continue the interaction. And those are not the same thing. You completed the exchange, but you didn't build anything. Because most people think, if I answered clearly, I did my part. But conversation isn't a transaction, it's movement. And if nothing moves, it stops right there. No curiosity, no direction, no reason to continue. So instead of thinking, did I answer the question? Shift it to, did I give this something to follow up on? That's the difference. "It was good" ends it. Add one detail. "It was good. Actually, one part of it caught me off guard." Now there's something to stay with. Now the other person has something to follow up on. There's two levels happening in almost every conversation. Level one, you answer the question. Level two, you give the conversation something to build on. Most people say a level one, not because they can't go further, but because they don't realize they're closing the conversation when they answer. So it ends right there, and no one calls it out. Level one sounds like this. "It was good." Level two sounds like this. "It was good. Honestly, I didn't expect part of it to turn out the way it did." Same answer, but there's something to follow up on. You can see it happen in real time. Someone says, "Tell me about your trip." You respond, "It was good." And then they jump in. They start talking about their trip, their experience, their story, because there was nothing in your answer for them to stay with. And now the conversation shifts away from you, not because they didn't care, but because you gave them nothing to continue. Now run that again. Same question. This time you say, "It was good. Honestly, one part of it was beyond what I expected." And they stay with it. They pick one detail. They follow it. Then they go deeper. Then something more personal. And now the conversation has direction. So what changed? Not the topic, what they chose to follow. And that's the skill. When someone says something, don't move on. Follow what stands out. Because the difference was never what was said, it was what got continued. This is where most people miss it. They think conversation is about knowing what to say next. It's not all the time. It's about recognizing what just got said. Because every strong question comes from the previous answer, which means if you're thinking about your next line, you're already behind. If you're waiting to talk, you're not actually in the conversation. The adjustment is simple. Stay with one thing. Not everything they said, just one detail, one part that stands out, and follow it. If they say, "I just got back from a trip. Honestly, it was exhausting." Most people move on. You stay there. Exhausting how? Now you're not guessing what to say next. You're continuing what already started. Now, here's where people lose control. Some don't shut conversations down. They overload them. They start talking, then they keep going. More detail, more stories, more proof. And now the other person is looking for a way out. Not because you're boring, but because you took control in the wrong direction. Instead of adding more, cut it earlier. Say less and leave something unfinished. Don't do this. And then this happened, and then this, and then that, and then this. Do this. And that part didn't go the way I expected. Stop there. Now they step in. Now the conversation stays more balanced. You didn't lose them at the beginning. You lost them when you didn't leave room. Most people try to improve conversations by saying more, better words, stronger points, more information. But that's not what creates depth. Space does. Silence does. Letting something sit without immediately filling it does more for a conversation than anything you could say next. Because now the other person has room to step in. Someone says, honestly, that whole situation was frustrating. Most people respond immediately. Advice, agreement, a story. You don't. You let it sit just for a second. And then, what part of it bothered you the most? Now they go deeper. Not because you said more, but because you didn't. Most people talk to avoid silence. High-level communicators use it. When you do this, conversations stop feeling forced. People stay longer. They give you more. They open up faster without being pushed. Because now, you're not trying to carry the conversation. You're giving it space to build. Most people answer questions. High-level communicators expand them. They don't try to prove anything. They create direction and let the conversation grow into it. And that's why people stay. Because if you don't catch this, you'll keep ending conversations without realizing it. Saying the right things and still watching them stall out in real time. And once that happens, it doesn't just stop the conversation. It starts shifting it away from what you actually meant. Now you're not continuing the conversation. You're trying to recover it. And that's where most people lose control again. That's the next problem we're going to tackle in this next video. I'll see you there.